SIGD Report is proudly brought to you by Tower, Rural Insurance Specialists.
Welcome to Tower Sector Report. I'm David Beatson, and this week, poultry farmers answer the caged hen critics, revving up rural retailing, and New Zealand agri-science at the cutting edge.
It's wildlife CSI type stuff. It's kind of, built from human methodologies but applied in a wildlife setting.
Caged hen critics had their say, now it's the poultry farmers' turn. And the new hand at the helm of the RD1 retail chain. Well, New Zealand could be the Silicon Valley of agricultural knowledge, and our exports of agri-science know-how could rival our farm products as a value generator for the country. Well, that was the challenge that Professor Julian Cribb, the author of The Coming Famine, tabled during a recent visit here. Since then, we've been searching for the companies that could put New Zealand at the cutting edge of the agri-science knowledge wave. Our field correspondent, Drew Chappell, found two recent award winners who are well on the way.
In the 21st century, farm science is truly big business. We live in a world where people in lab coats are influencing the farming landscape as much, if not more than, those in gumboots. Animal health, genetic research and DNA sequencing are the chemical keys to a more profitable future, or so the government thinks. They've poured hundreds of millions of dollars into R&D projects, trying to keep New Zealand at the forefront of farming science, as part of a funding policy to foster innovation. And it looks like we're starting to see the results. Dr. Doug Cleverly is the CEO of animal health pharmaceutical company Argenta, a research and manufacturing facility which is turning over more than $100 million annually.
So the interesting thing about this is the bench that I started my career in animal health on in 1992, and it's in exactly the same condition.
In 1996, when Doug formed Argenta, the facilities weren't quite so impressive. Just 15 years later though, and it's one of the world's leading animal health companies. Dr. Cleverly says New Zealand-based firms face unique challenges when targeting the agricultural market, but it helps to see things in the right light.
Well, what is very unique about New Zealand and Australia, the farming, is the impact of resistance to productivity. The first combination drench came out of Argenta, came out of New Farm. It was then called New Farm, which is called Triton. So that was the first combination of 3 drugs into a product that could actually beat resistance in sheep. You know, and that was a pretty major moment for New Zealand farmers to have access to that sort of technology, and that came out of this research lab here.
Since the majority of Argenta's work is in research for or export to other countries, their health standards are extremely high to ensure they make the grade internationally.
What is interesting about the level of quality of the products that we make, the level of quality is actually as high, if not higher, than human health. So the standards that we apply are, for instance, we can make human health pharmaceuticals in this plant for sale in the United States if we chose to. Yeah, so the standards are exactly the same. The difference is that human beings don't eat other human beings, so the requirements are actually a little bit more stringent in some areas in animal health than in human health.
Dr. Cleverly knows the farming landscape is changing, both here and overseas. Animal health is becoming more and more of a priority in Europe and the US, 2 of our largest export markets. It's through companies like Argenta that many are saying we will ride out the current economic turmoil dominating the Western world. Dr. Cleverly says there's no reason we shouldn't keep growing in both stature and reputation despite tough economic conditions.
It's exponential. There's no limit to growth, that's for sure. You know, and the rest of the world right now is worried about who's going to be paying for the next grocery bill. You know, whereas New Zealand is, ahead of the news this morning, is actually relatively immune to this latest round of financial shenanigans up in the northern hemisphere. So we're relatively stable here, and we're able to exhibit some pretty serious growth.
In August, Argenta was awarded a $4.7 million government grant, which will go into R&D around New Zealand projects, something the science team here takes very seriously.
We sort of leverage off the international demand for our services to provide products that meet local demand. And this grant from the government is geared directly towards that, and that's going to return. It's 4.7 million coming in. We want to see at least $20 million of value coming out, to New Zealanders, because we take money that is given by taxpayers very, very seriously. Take it more seriously than money that I've got. So it's a responsibility and obligation to do the right thing with it.
Kiwi farmers are a notoriously hard group to please, something Dr. Cleverly says is good because it keeps companies like Argenta on their toes.
Because we invent the products that we sell, those products are premium products. So when a global financial crisis hits, the farmer says, well, I'm not going to use those anymore because they're expensive. Sure, they give me a positive dollar return on their use, but hey, they're a lot of money. I'm going to go back to using these commodity type products. And they did that for about 6 to 9 months. But then they sort of realised, well, that was a bad plan. So I'm going back to the products that actually give me better productivity per dollar spent, and those are the products that we actually focus on making. So our revenues have gone up 100%, and manufacturing revenues have gone from 23 to 50 million over that time period, so 2 years. That's a phenomenal increase in revenue.
But Argenta is far from the only organisation set up to deal with farming problems in the lab. As a part of Landcare Research, EcoGene is New Zealand's only wildlife DNA forensics lab, a science team headed up by Dr. Diane Gleeson. Among other things, the team at EcoGene has been working closely on the microbiology around kiwifruit vine disease, PSA. EcoGene was the first port of call for kiwifruit growers worried about the mystery infection, and they didn't disappoint, returning a quick verdict, although it wasn't good news.
We were lucky that we have the facilities here in the laboratory of this new technology, which is called next generation sequencing. And what this next generation sequencing technology can deliver is full genomes of particular things of concern that you're wanting to address, and you can do it really quite rapidly. Within a week you can get that kind of data. We've continued to be part of the overall operations around trying to detect PSA and actually understanding a bit more about it. So it's a much bigger collaboration now with other institutes. But yeah, it was nice to kind of have the opportunity to give that first data.
As a diagnostics lab, the identification of disease in plant and animal species is just one important aspect of the work which goes on here.
As we go on, there's more and more issues around wildlife, about as people become more closely associated with those sort of environments, that we need to be looking at a range of tools to look at things like, disease reservoirs within wildlife. That's quite a significant issue, to the whole sort of biodiversity protection. And it's an important industry for New Zealand in the sense that tourists come here to see our biodiversity. It's also incredibly important for the sustainability of our agriculture as well. Yep. And so we need these sorts of tools.
They're also doing important work in pest management, working with conservation teams and TB Free New Zealand to develop new ways of identifying animals which threaten our industries.
We can get individual identifications of possums from those fecal samples from areas, and we can use that as a way of enumerating individuals in a location. And what we found was that that work, which was with the Animal Health Board, was that previous methodologies for enumerating individuals, so getting a handle on how many are in a location, can vastly underestimate the actual number of individuals, because the little devils usually are sitting up in trees and then they don't actually come down and encounter the other methods that was used with some of these sort of trapping methodologies.
And it's not just possums either. Diane and her team are currently working on methods of tracking cats, dogs and other animals which are impacting negatively on our wildlife. One example is the stoat problem on Kapiti Island, where the pests were discovered earlier this year.
Who are they killing, but also numbers of individuals that are left after eradication operations. Department of Conservation is spending a lot of money on eradicating these pests off islands to make them pest free, and the little devils sometimes pop back up again. And what's needed to know is are they surviving residents after an eradication? So did the eradication work, or are they recent immigrants? And so the DNA can detect the difference between a resident and an immigrant because there's enough of a genetic sort of signature.
Once the farming pioneers of this land carved their way through wild scrub and tilled our soil, introducing new ways of turning resources into profit. Now, a new breed of farming pioneers wear white coats, mix chemicals, and examine swabs under microscopes. A work certainly less rugged, but no less vital.
Drew Chappell reporting. Coming next, can factory farming and healthy hens coexist? That's next on Tower Sector Report. Welcome back to Tower Sector Report. Well, last week we looked at the campaign to end egg production from caged hens, a campaign that's being mounted by the SPCA, by the Save Animals from Exploitation organisation and the Green Party. The National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee is now finalising recommendations on a new code of practice for the poultry industry, a code that could see a new upgraded furnished colony cage phased in to replace existing conventional cages used in the production of around about 88% of all the eggs that we buy. But the campaigners say this change will still leave New Zealand lagging behind new welfare standards being set in some European countries that will soon see cages banned altogether. Well, joining me now is Michael Brooks of the Egg Producers Federation of New Zealand. Welcome, Michael. Okay,
good morning, David.
First up, do you accept that the existing layered cage production methods that are being used are going to have to be changed?
That's been the position of the Egg Producers Federation. Actually, the Egg Producers Federation has been proactive on this stance.
Why were you actually prepared to make a change?
Because we were looking, and as an industry, the Egg Producers Federation has always been looking at different welfare options for all our three production systems, free range, barn or cage. And in the cage area in overseas, there's been this move to what are called colony or furnished cages. Mm-hmm. And these are systems that allow a discrete enclosed nesting area, a perch, a scratchy area. And we put $150,000 of members' money together with funding from government into a 3-year trial over the last 3 years.
I want to explore that a bit more a little later in the interview. But right now you've got these welfare groups all saying abandon cage production altogether. What's your response to them?
And as I said, that we see the current cage system. Yes, that should change to the options of colonies or free range or barn. The issue is, however, that colony systems are recognised by welfare experts as allowing birds to express natural patterns of behaviour. So that's an option. Free range is an option. Barn is an option.
Have you got any measure that tells you that this will actually improve hen health and welfare to any significant degree?
Yes,
a significant degree.
A significant degree. The major issue in welfare, there are what are called the 5 freedoms: freedom, supply of food and water, freedom from disease and injury, freedom from pain and suffering, and freedom to express natural patterns of behaviour. Now, the issue with cages is that birds can't express natural patterns of behaviour. The key natural pattern of behaviour for a layer hen is a wish to have a discrete enclosed nest area. The colony system offers that. Another key behaviour is perching. The colony system offers that. Another key behaviour is scratching. Scratch pads are in there. So those are the 3. Okay. But it's not just the industry that says that. NAWAC have said in their code, yes, we think colony cages meet the requirements of the Animal Welfare Act. The leading animal welfare universities around the world, Guelph University in Canada, Bristol University in the UK, the Farm Animal Welfare Council of the UK, the major advisor to the British government, says yes. The New Zealand Veterinary Association see the colony system as offering advantages in terms of welfare.
But in Germany and Austria, operating under European rules which would have permitted a change to furnished cage colony cages, actually didn't go for that option. Germany and Austria are out of cage production altogether.
Sorry, David, that is completely wrong.
Is it?
And
why do you say that? Because I actually got that from an International Egg Association report.
No, the situation in Germany is that a court decision has said the legal requirements are not correct, but they haven't made that final decision in terms of that position. In Austria, yeah, I understand they have, but the EU position is across the EU that the colony system is the way to go. The American egg industry, together with the American Humane Society, has said yes, they are going to approach the American federal government and say this is the way to go.
Again, you conducted a trial. Mm-hmm. Did it actually show there was a significant improvement either in the health condition, bone strength, all those other things that you measure when you look at the health of an animal, a hen, whatever it be? Were there significant differences?
As I said before, it allows those natural patterns of behaviour.
I understand that bit, but did it actually make a real difference in terms of any of the physiological changes?
Cage systems actually are outside of the natural behaviours are actually the best systems in terms of less mortality, less disease. It does improve bone strength. It does so in those areas. Yes, it's a good system.
Effectively, you're saying that of the farming options, it's a good system. Final question: the evidence is that consumers are actually voting with their wallets. They're not actually switching in large numbers to free-range eggs where they have the option anyway. But what is the potential cost of this change, both from the producer's perspective and the consumer's perspective?
If it happened overnight, the cost and we are talking 47 cage farmers. 47 cage farmers in this country supply 88% of our eggs. If it happened overnight, it would be $150 million. So that's why
$150 million one-off or a year?
No, $150 million would be the one-off cost.
One-off cost.
Spread over those 47 farmers. That's why the key issue from the Federation is whatever change is made, there has to be a fair and reasonable transition time frame to let farmers move out of their current systems into whatever other system they choose to put in place.
And what do you regard as a fair and reasonable time frame?
We would see in the Independent Economic Consultants report by MAF, said it, as did our own economic consultants report, between 18 to 20 years. Otherwise there's a cost back on the farmers.
But realistically, when you come back and look at the situation, do you honestly believe that you could actually take 20 years to get somewhere?
Well, then you have a situation where farmers who are currently acting totally legally under the Act are being required to bear costs of a change. Now, they'll make that change, but is there a fairness on those farmers to bear that cost? If they've been acting lawfully to this point, the law now changes. We're saying, yes, they will make the change. If it can be encouraged to move faster, then there should be some encouragements to do so. But a fair and equitable transition is all that the farmers are the cage sector farmers are asking for.
Michael Brooks, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Michael Brooks, Chief Executive of the Egg Producers Federation of New Zealand. And next on Tower Sector Report, revving up the rural retail trade. Well, the latest retail sales statistics show a slow but steady recovery through the first half of this year. Quarterly sales now ticking over at just under $17 billion. But it is a tough, highly competitive business, particularly if you're operating in the chain store sector. One of New Zealand's oldest chains and our largest rural supplies retailer to dairy farmers has just undergone an ownership change and a change of chief executive. RD1's roots go back almost 100 years, and the company operates 63 stores and has a mobile team of 40 technical sales reps and more than 20 stock agents out in the field. Well, last July, Fonterra exercised its preemptive rights to shares being sold by its Australian partner Landmark to reclaim 100% ownership of the chain. And last month, Sarah Kennedy was appointed to take over the role of RD1 Chief Executive. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much, David.
8 days on the job.
Yes, no difficult questions.
We'll try to make some of them difficult. Let's start at the beginning. I mean, you trained as a vet, and that takes a fair while to get qualified. What on earth impels a vet to become a retail chain CEO?
Yeah, it's a great question, and of course it didn't happen immediately. It sort of happened over time by a series of, I suppose, opportunities and changes that I went through. I practiced as a vet for 5 years. I won't say it was on farm. I did small animals and horses. both here in New Zealand and in England. And when I came back, I wanted to specialise. Being a vet is absolutely fantastic, but as a general practitioner, you do many things. So I wanted to specialise, and I actually joined Goodman Fielder at that time as an animal nutritionist, and specialised in those days in aquaculture.
And then you went through Healtheries? You went through Tegel?
I went to Tegel as General Manager of Retail, which really took me out of the rural and straight into FMCG.
Yeah.
And I think, as we were talking about, there's nothing faster. So FMCG being fast-moving consumer goods, nothing faster than chicken.
Yeah, 7 years to grow and 48 hours to sell, right?
Yeah, people always sort of misunderstand when I say it takes 7 years to get it to the table. But in fact, when you go through all of the breeding cycles, and I'll say breeding cycles because that's how we get the genetic improvements the whole time, then to the table is 7 years, and you've literally got about 48 hours to sell it. Mm-hmm. So incredibly fast moving. So that was great. I loved that. Mm-hmm. And then from there, was approached to be Chief Executive of Healtheries, which was, obviously, as many know, the brand here is an iconic vitamin and supplement brand. And we had foods and teas as well.
Another heritage company.
Oh, wonderful. 100 years old.
Yep.
One of our values was guardians of the brand, because really we were custodians of this fabulous brand. So we grew that from about 25 million to 200 million over 10 years, and that was done by organic growth and by acquisition, both in New Zealand and Australia. So really, a great business.
Okay, RD1 is, 100 years old back to its original roots. It's just gone through an ownership change, 100% ownership now by Fonterra again. You're always very closely associated with dairy, but the loss of the Australian partner landmark, how does that affect your ability to present a product range and to get the volume buying power that you would have had as a combination?
Well, I've come in after that partnership, but I think that partnership with that JV over the last 5 years has been great, as in, aligning terms, aligning, getting, buying volumes, getting the purchasing, being able to benchmark. But I think many of the benefits has been reached, and I think the benefits RD1 can have with 100% ownership by Fonterra are really great going forward.
So what is your 100% shareholder telling you? What is your strategic goal?
I suppose our strategic goal, I'd say, is to increase our share of the farmers that shop with us, particularly our shareholders. And to do that, we've got a number of strategies in place. This is on day 8, though, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, okay. But you must have had some ideas, because they wouldn't have picked you otherwise.
Well, look, I think RD1 over the last 6-7 years has done a fantastic job. Really their motto is low prices, great service. And I think that is really important for the brand. I think let's look at, good prices. That's always keeping that core range at a competitive rate for the farmers. I mean, New Zealand itself is a low-cost supplier. We're a low-cost agricultural business, and how do we keep that low cost? And it's a low-cost agrarian grass-based system.
How do you actually, however, push the boundaries of your customer base out when you are so firmly associated with the dairy sector?
Well, I think the dairy sector makes up a huge part of our...
Yes, it does. But
they're our core, and and I want to make sure we've got the best share of that market that we can, and grow that share. I think we also, by offering good prices and great service, will attract other farmers, certainly dry stock farmers. And I think certainly, in some of our more urban rural areas, like Whangarei, like Pukekohe, like Cambridge, can offer to the lifestyle block farmers as well. And really, by many of them, and I know this because my daughter-in-law has a lifestyle block at Karaka, and they love coming into the RD1 store because they get really good information.
Now tell me, you're going to have to put your stamp on the company as chief executive. So what is the stamp you want to put on the RD1 brand?
Well, I think, as I said before, after day 8, I can't really say
Can you go in and buy sexy red gumboots for Christmas?
Well, I think we'll be looking at
That is a question I was asked to ask you.
Well, I think we'll be looking at all of the farming and the farming partnership and asking what they want. But just to your point, and I suppose I do say this, and this is really just coming in, that I'd say in farming, and particularly in dairy farming, but all farming, it's one of the true partnerships between a husband and a wife, or a male and a female in a partnership. And just sometimes, and this is me looking from the outside in and having worked in this sector before, do we recognise all of that partnership and do we recognise the female component? So, you know, I hope I can bring a bit of that. I'm not going to come in with sexy red gumboots with heels. Mind you, I did buy a beautiful pair of plastic cowboy boots in the US that I'll be looking for. But, you know, I'd like to talk to a number of the female part in this partnership and start saying to them, what are you looking for?
We'll look at the progress as you go. Sarah Kennedy, thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Sarah Kennedy, new Chief Executive of the rural retail chain RD1. And that's all for now, but you can catch our show again anytime via the internet at www.country99tv.co.nz. Thanks for your company. I'm David Beatson for Tower Sector Report. Till next time, goodbye.
Sector Report was proudly brought to you by Tower, Rural Insurance Specialists.